You know, for most of us, when we go home, when we talk about illegal immigration, or when we talk about the terrorist or the threat of terrorism, or when we talk about drug smuggling, the one thing that our constituents say is secure the border. Secure the border. That's always the first thing they say, regardless of what we're talking about, whether it's illegal immigrants, whether it's terrorism, the threat of terrorism. They always say that first, and it's very important. Now, I'll be quite honest with you. I'm from South Georgia, and I don't get out a whole lot. In fact, quite honestly, this is the first time I've ever been to the southwest border. Never been to California before I went on this trip, never been to Arizona, and although I've been to Texas, I've never been to the Rio Grande. So it was an eye-opening experience for me. Before I went there, I think that I was like most of my constituents and like many Americans. I would watch what's happening on TV, and I'd holler at the TV, build a fence, build a fence. Right. Well, after you visit it, and after you talk to the Border Patrol agents, after you talk to the ranchers, after you talk to the local officials, you realize that in each sector, that's not necessarily the answer. That in certain sectors, yes, a fence is needed. But in other areas, in other sectors, that is not what is needed. That we need more technology, that we need boots on the ground. Those are the type of things that we need in certain sectors, and that was eye-opening. That was one of the takeaways that I had from this trip.
Well, the gentleman here, for just one moment, I wanted to point to one of the visuals we have here. Again, this is from the area in my sector where you can see we do have a fence, but the area that's cut out here in the middle is where the cartels very quickly come up and they cut it out, and they are across that border in a minute or 2 minutes maximum. And I'll give some other examples later, but this is just a visual example of the fence delays the activity, as you saw when you came to visit, but it's not the answer. Build a fence and then walk away, because they're smart, they're resourceful, they're adaptive, and they're very quickly getting through many different types of fencing, both pedestrian and vehicle fences. So thanks for bringing that up.
Well, thank you. And you know, that was the first takeaway I had. The second takeaway I had from this trip was, for most of us, when we think of the southwestern border, we just think about illegal immigration. But it is much, much more than that. When you think about the drug cartels that are in Mexico, south of us, when you think about the drug smugglers that are bringing those drugs, poisoning our children, poisoning families, ruining families. When you think about that, when you think about the terrorism threat that we face as a nation, that shows you just what our borders are and just how important this issue is. And again, that's why this bill is so important, because it addresses that. Yes, it addresses fencing, and it calls for fencing where fencing is necessary. Right. It addresses boots on the ground. It helps us to bolster the number of people and the number of agents that we have in certain areas, and we need that. It also takes into consideration technology, and it utilizes the resources that we have. It's a smart bill. It's a good bill. It's a vital bill to our national security, and that's why I'm glad I went on the trip. It was very educational, very eye-opening to me. I'm glad that I'm supporting this bill. I hope that my colleagues will support this bill. It is essential and vital to our national security. Again, thank you, the gentlewoman from Arizona, for the work that you're doing, and thank you